back.
The Arnold is back, and I was going to give you my best Arnie impression, but I decided to save you from that torture, and we will just talk about the athletes that have been invited, and maybe more importantly, some of the athletes that weren't invited. Auntie Liz, tell us the score.
So after a year off, the Arnold Strongman Classic is back in Columbus, Ohio on the 4th and 5th of March 2022. So the qualifiers for next year's competition didn't happen this year. Usually we would see Arnold's competitions pop up in Africa, South America, Australia, Europe, but none of that has happened this year. So it's quite interesting when you look at the athletes that have been, I'm guessing, hand selected for the show.
So shall we take a look at who's been invited?
Let's.
So the first athlete is Maxime Boudreau. Really great to see Maxime get invited to this. Obviously, he's got his third place from World's Strongest Man, but he was also third in the American Arnold qualifier back in early 2020. So he's got good pedigree in terms of Arnold's competitions. He's had a great year, 2021, a worthy invite to the 2022 Arnold Strongman Classic.
Next up is JFkaran. No surprises really. JF placed 4th at the 2020 Arnold Strongman Classic, and he's consistently done the Arnolds and their qualifiers since 2018 now. So JF is a regular on the Arnold scene now, but he's also just a consistent athlete in any show that he goes to.
You put a big show on, you want JF in it.
Yeah.
The third athlete is Rob Kearney. Now, Rob has won one of the Arnold competitions in the past, 2019, in Australia. Last year, he's had an okay year, this year, he's had an okay year. He came 6th at the Rogue. Obviously, had injuries to deal with, he had cancer to deal with. Just the fact he's come back from all of that. He's also taken over the Strongman Corp in America, an extremely busy man, and he's training hard for the Arnold 2022.
So next up is Mateusz Kiligaskowski. Now, he has an excellent track record at the Arnolds. He first competed in the Pro Show in 2018 and he placed 4th. Since then, he's done a load of their qualifiers, all of their Pro Shows, and he's never been off the podium. So he was 2nd at last year's Arnold Strongman Classic. He's won some of the qualifiers before. I know he's won the Europe's one in 2019, which was absolutely stacked. It had everyone in it. So really excited to see Mateusz in this, and I just hope he's healthy. And
I hope after this year, getting a few competitions under his belt, we're going to see the best of Kiligaskowski in the 2022 Arnolds. Next up, we've got Kiligaskowski's buddy and rival, Martins Lissis, the 2019 World's Strongest Man. 2020, he was 3rd at the Arnolds. Obviously had a bit of a layoff then from competition, came back and won the Rogue Invitational towards the end of this year. He's always dangerous. When you speak to Lissis, he really talks about wanting to win the Arnolds as well. He thinks, I've already won World's Strongest Man, I've got that title ticked off. He's won the Rogue, he's ticked that off. He wants to add the Arnolds. He believes if you want to be one of the greats, you've got to win everything. And that's his mentality. Spoke to him earlier this year. The Arnolds is really high on his list.
Next is Evgeny Markov from Russia. Now, he won the 2020 Amateur Arnolds, which would have qualified him for the 2021 Arnold Strongman Classic, which obviously hasn't happened. So he's now going into the 2022 competition. Now, the Amateur Arnolds, it's brought us some amazing athletes. This has given us Alexi Novakov, Mateusz Kiligaskowski. We've had some real, world-class athletes come through this route, so I'm really excited to see what he can do.
I am as well. I think when you look at the list of Amateur Arnold winners who have gone on to see what they've done since then, there's some incredible guys, and I think Evgeny is going to go into that list. He's done some impressive things that we've kind of witnessed this year. Won the Middle East Strongest Man. He's going to be doing Worcester this year. I'm excited to see how he does at the Arnold Classic. So Trey Mitchell is next, and he's someone that hasn't really done too much when it comes to the Arnold shows, but in the last year he's done extremely well. He finished 4th at World's Strongest Man and performed exceptionally well winning the Shaw Classic, which has a lot of the same type of athletes in. Very heavy show, a bit like the Arnolds as well. I'm looking forward to seeing Trey. He's really stepped up this last year, and I'm confident he's going to be in there, challenging for titles in 2022.
Next up is Alexi Novakov. So as we just mentioned, he is a former Arnold Amateur winner. He placed 5th at last year's competition. Now, What's really incredible is since then, he's won World's Strongest Man. It's hard to believe. It's been
so
such a
long
long
ago.
time,
Yeah.
because it was at the beginning of last year, and it will be 2 years by the time this happens. So Alexi is a completely different athlete since the last time we saw him at the Arnold Strongman Classic, and you'd never bet against Alexi, would you?
He's proven this last year. He's so consistent. I think he's going to be a threat. So next up, we have Europe's strongest man, Luke Stoltman. And Luke is someone that's actually never done an Arnold qualifier show. But he's had a great year, 2021. Competed at the Rogue. He's a Rogue-sponsored athlete. And I think his performances from 2021 deserve him an invite to this show.
And finally, another athlete who also has never done a Arnold's qualifier, but you're not going to not invite World's Strongest Man. So Tom Stoltman is obviously going to be at the Arnold Strongman Classic. And it will be interesting because the timing, it's not long after Britain's Strongest Man, it's not long before Europe's Strongest Man, and it's smack bang in the middle of prep, I guess, for World's Strongest Man. So, it's going to come down to what is important to the athletes and what do they choose to really train for.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be an interesting one to see athletes' approaches. I mean, I already mentioned that Alexis really wants to win the Arnolds. Kiligaskowski wants to win the Arnolds. I'm sure Tom would love to add that title to already being the world's strongest man. But like you said, Britain's strongest man, I think it's only a few weeks before. Yeah. There's other big shows that he wants to focus on. And Tom has already said Worlds is his big focus. He wants to be a 2-time winner of World's Strongest Man. But people within the sport often see the Arnolds as good, if not bigger, in terms of pure strength.
Yeah.
People have... There's always been that argument. I think outside of the hardcore, World's Strongest Man has the bigger recognition.
Of course.
But when you're a die-hard fan, a lot of people rate the Arnolds as a little bit more. So it's going to be interesting to see what he picks. I think it's an amazing list of athletes. We don't know the events yet.
No, not yet.
But I think it's going to be a great show. I think we're going to have a lot of great battles next year. We should probably mention that Bobby Thompson is the reserve currently. If any of those guys do not take their invitation or they get injured, Bobby Thompson will step in. And obviously, this far out from competitions, things can always change. Yeah. But that is your list of athletes that have been invited to compete at the 2022 Arnold Strongman Classic. Couple of names there that maybe people will say, well, why is Evan Singleton not been invited? Why is Brian Shaw not in that list?
Let's pick them apart, Lozzie. Why? Let's start with Brian.
Okay.
We all saw Postergate. Now, Brian, he did a qualifier last year in January, the Arnold USA. He came second to Martins. He didn't do the 2020 Arnold Strongman Classic. His name is not on the list for this one.
He publicly said he won't compete in Arnold shows. Maybe standing by his word. You got to respect that. So Evan's another athlete that could very well warrant an invite. He's had an amazing year, 2021. Last time he competed in an Arnold show was way back in 2019. He did the Africa, where he placed 5th. But since then, hasn't competed in any Arnold's qualifiers. He's focused on Giants Live and World's Strongest Man.
I would really like to see Evan in this, though. I think it would do a lot for Evan's reputation because he's come on a lot in the last 2 years. I think to have him in a show, because he's not had good luck at Worlds, injured and then sick in the 2 years he's done it. I think a competition where he's up against the absolute top names in the sport, if he can excel there, it's really going to do big things for Evan.
Absolutely. I wouldn't mind seeing this stretch to 12 athletes as well.
I
think that would be really good. See 12 of the best in the world head-to-head at the Arnolds.
And I'd definitely put Evan in there.
Absolutely.
So another few people that are missing are Arnold's regulars, Mateusz Kiligaskowski, Jerry Pritchett, Rauno Heinle and Mateusz Belsak. Now, all of them have had some form of injury this last year. Obviously, Mateusz Kiligaskowski has hurt his Achilles at the official Strongman Games. Jerry Pritchett is still building back. He's done well in the Arnolds in the past. I remember 2017, he placed 3rd. But he's not quite at that level right now from what we've seen of him recently. Rauno Heinle would usually, he's a regular at the Arnolds, but he has recently torn his quad. So I think the extra recovery time would be really good for him. And Belsak, we haven't seen since the 2020 Arnolds because he had, was it a hip replacement?
Hip surgery, yep.
Okay.
Yep. So that's the lineup for the Arnolds 2022. Without seeing the events, Who do you guys think's going to win?
Who do you think's going to win without seeing the event?
My heart wants to say Kiligaskowski.
Mine does too.
But
no,
I need to...
Kiligaskowski.
All right, there we go.
Kiligaskowski for the win.
While you're here, guys, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my awesome strength content.